Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today we're going to continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I could not make this up if I tried. This morning at 7 a.m., SRG 320 updated the Sega Saturn core with new enhancements and new working games. It's now 9 a.m. and I'm at voiceover time. But it's always great when the Saturn core gets updated, that way we know SRG 320 is good, and we get to test some new Saturn games. This is 5 days in a row this week. I've had an extra video, and it's been a ton of fun. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But one of the games mentioned that's now working that didn't used to before is Thunder Force 5. This has gone from slightly working to completely not bootable whatsoever. Now it is like 95% working on the current core. You can get into the game, all the graphics look correct. You will sometimes lose audio though. It seems like if too many sound effects and too many musical tracks play at once, the audio drops out. What I actually found when I put my studio headphones on in editing is that the audio drops to basically 0 volume, but you can hear it underneath. So it's one of those things, if you lose audio while playing this, you'll 100% know why. But otherwise, this has gotten so much better since the last time we looked at it. And on the previous core, this game went back into the non-bootable category. So it's awesome to see Thunder Force 5 working here. It's such a fun shmup with so many unique elements, and it is working on the current core. And SRG 320 publishes notes on his Patreon when he updates things what games should be working. So if you don't support him on Patreon, maybe now is the time so you can find out what those games are. As we go into a different level here, all of the graphics just seem accurate to my eye, but leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. I am not the biggest Thunder Force 5 player. It's not my favorite shmup of all time. It is awesome, but I definitely go to other things when I'm playing Saturn. But all of the parallax scrolling, all of that pseudo-transparency where you can see the city underneath all of this construction does look really good, and it's so much fun to see this drawing on Saturn, because it does play around with both mostly 2D elements but slight polygons here and there. So it is a fun instance where it's basically using all of the different capabilities of the Saturn to draw an image all at once. But I will say, at least for me, this game is hard as nails. It 100% hands me my butt every single time I play it, but that doesn't mean I don't have a fun time. It just means I need to play this game more to get better at it. But now that it works on the current Sega Saturn core, that means I can play it more, because interestingly, this is a game that I do not have in my collection, and that's something I don't say very often on the channel. But as this boss comes in here, the game is just working, it's responsive, it's playable, it's all the things you need to have a good time. I played around with all 3 levels, and all 3 of them had no issues whatsoever, so this does seem like a game that you could probably complete if you were good enough not to just continue to game over like I did. Now, last video I had some issues getting Shinobi to start, but it comes to find out that you have to disable the second player controller port or else it freezes. So this again has been promoted to the working category. Andy D helped with this capture here, and I tested it this morning on the current core and it's working totally fine. And if you've never played Shinobi before on the Sega Saturn, it is an awesome 2D hack and slash beat 'em up that uses that Mortal Kombat aesthetic of digitized actors playing all of the characters. It's a total vibe, it 100% works, and the game is really stylistically interesting as well. It's one of those games just synonymous with Saturn, and for the longest time this game was also doing a non-boot situation, but now we have it here on the current Saturn core as of this morning, and it's just 100% a great time, and I love all the different special effects and attacks you get in this game as well. It's constantly showing you new visuals, all of the levels are distinct and interesting. This is just a ton of fun to play, and it also has a good challenge to it as well. You really need to learn the enemy patterns and the timings and everything else that comes with getting good at this game, or else you're going to continue to see the game over screen. But actually being able to get better at the game is where a lot of the fun comes from, and since it's working on the current Saturn core, that means you can get in on the fun today and check it out, and who would not complain about that? The other thing is, the last time we featured this game, the audio was definitely crackly and poppy and had some issues, but now it just sounds 100% accurate to my ears compared to original hardware. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll come back and show you a lot more games that started working this morning that never used to work before. Just sounds awesome to my ear, but let me know what you think down below. And again, if you've never played Shinobi before, I 100% recommend you check it out. And the best part is, on the current core, it does seem like you could complete it. The second best part is these FMV sequences, which are absolutely hilarious for all the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. The actual camera direction and otherwise acting isn't bad, it's just so 90s you can't help but love it. But as we move into the second stage here, everything loads fine, all the music works, the controls are responsive. It is the Shinobi everyone remembers from the Sega Saturn, and it is a game that as of recently didn't work whatsoever, that now 100% works again, and we can't get enough of that. Now, Death Crimson, a game I made a joke about like 3 videos ago that had completely mangled graphics, was on the Patreon notes from SRG320 as being improved. Now, I'm highly presuming this is not his favorite game in the world. If this is anybody's favorite game in the world, I would be very suspicious about what they like in gaming. But it did probably have something to do with a common error that was occurring in different games, and maybe Death Crimson was the easiest game to determine the fix. This is an experience. It does not work. It is a weird game. It's near impossible to complete. What you're seeing on screen right now is an accurate representation of what Death Crimson actually is. If you see weird colors, if you see weird graphics, if you see the game basically looking like it is breaking, that is the Death Crimson experience on original hardware with an original disc. Trust me, I know. I bought this game to check it out. I knew it was bad and it didn't disappoint me. So what you're seeing right here is what Death Crimson should look like on a Sega Saturn and how it should perform on a Sega Saturn on the current core. So sometimes a really bad game that is infamous for being strange is a good way to tell the accuracy. Because you've seen it so many times made fun of, you can then determine whether or not it is working. So I can tell you right now, for any strange reason you want to play Death Crimson on the Sega Saturn core, you 100% can, and you 200% should not. But now moving over to a game that's working perfectly fine that you should 100% definitely play, also in the same light gun genre, is Crypt Killer. I own this on Sega Saturn, PlayStation 1, and an original arcade board that I'll be showing on the channel soon. The Saturn version is definitely not the best visually, but as far as the gameplay is concerned, this is 100% a game that you should be loading up in October any way you can and giving it a play because it's just an awesome time. It's like a B-movie monster horror experience a la Ray Harryhausen. It basically looks like the sprites could be claymation. All of the animations are just so weird and wonderful. I absolutely love this game, and I have played this game to absolute death as well on every platform it exists on. What I can tell you right now is this just seems like the Crypt Killer experience. The Sega Saturn is not my default version to go to, but what I am seeing on screen right now, all of the gameplay just seems like an accurate representation of what Crypt Killer should be on the Sega Saturn. Now just be aware, light gun support is not here yet, so you have to play with a controller, which is not the recommended way to play, so if you do want to check this out, I might move over to the PlayStation 1 core for now. But Crypt Killer just has such a vibe. It's been one of my favorite games of all time for a very long time, so seeing it run on the current Saturn core with all of the visual effects, all of the sprite work, just 100% working, it is an absolute treat to my eye, and I'm so glad to be able to tell you this game works and recommend you check it out because it's also got hilarious voice acting in a good way as well as an awesome soundtrack. So go ahead and listen for like 35 seconds and I'll come back because I got more games to show you that work now just great.
The sealed door of destiny is opened by 2 eyes of guidance, and the treasures will be decided by the route you choose. So choose your path carefully.
Awesome game, awesome voice acting, awesome soundtrack. Just be aware because you are playing this with a controller, it's also going to be incredibly difficult and seeing the end of the game is going to be near impossible. Now another game that was marked as working that never used to work before is Assault Rigs, and I do feel like this is either a love it or hate it game. As far as the 3D is concerned, it's a really good example of what the Saturn could do with 3D when there were talented developers behind it, and it is a fun game. It just takes a lot of mind processing power to get used to the controls because this is tank controls to the nth degree, obviously because because you're playing as a tank. So it's one of those games, at the start you're going to be terrible at it, it's not going to be that fun, but as you practice and get to understand what the control scheme is asking of you, it is going to be an absolute blast. And seeing all of the graphics here rendered on the current core in real time, it just does look really accurate as well. Like I said, this isn't going to be that hidden gem on Saturn you're looking for, but it is a great technical example of rendering 3D on VDP1 and VDP2 in real time on the core, as well as all those different changes to the RAM that SRG320 has made. Kind of seems like he's reworking some parts of the core for better performance and just kind of dropping in these updates rapidly now, so it must be that he's iterating on the work quickly and seeing a lot of games come alive, and that's always an awesome time just to get an update that brings another handful or batch of games into the working category that never used to boot before. And if there's any games you want to see me test, leave me that comment down below. But as you see here, like I said, in this game, tank controls reign supreme, and if you're not good at that like I am, you're definitely going to be bouncing off the wall a lot. This is one of those games that just takes a lot of practice to get good at, but when you actually do get good at it, you're going to find that it's a charming experience, and it's one that you can 100% play on the core today. Kill all the enemies, find the exit, get out of the level. That is the game. But just look at the 3D. There's very little warping in the polygons, or in this instance quads, so it is a good example of what the Saturn could do for 3D. Now moving over to a 2D game, everyone keeps requesting this, so of course I'm going to give you some more. The original Dragon Quest. Last time we talked about the sequel, but this is probably the #1 most requested game I get when I asked for requests. And I know a couple of MiSTer Discord members are going to be very happy to see it in this video, so you better leave a comment down below and thank me. This is for you. Again, this is the type of genre that you either absolutely love it or you don't go anywhere near it. This is just such a fun time to me though, and it has so many sprites on screen at once. It just shows the power of Saturn drawing those 2D elements. Now obviously for memory capacity, a lot of the sprites on screen at once are going to be duplicates. That way they don't have to load up too many individual enemies into RAM at one time. But when you actually see all these sprites running around at once, it's just such an absolute beautiful game in action. I love all of the scrolling as well. And this game also has an absolutely epic soundtrack that sounds to my ear 100% perfect again on the core. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to listen to it, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit more about Saturn, but this update's been great, and so is this audio. It's just such a perfect soundtrack for the game because it's got that fantasy vibe, but I love as they run in on these horses here, which definitely don't look like any horse I've ever seen in real life. As they are defeated, they just fly up into the air and fade out. It's just kind of a comedy look, and I think the developers are trying to put a real sense of humor into this game while also making a really deep tactical RPG. So if for any reason you've never played Dragon Quest before or the sequel, I can't recommend enough you check them out. Even if it's not your favorite genre, you've never taken a look at this genre before, there's a lot to love here, and at least on the current core, you can get pretty deep into the game. Now it is a long game, so it could freeze 10 minutes after we're done. But it's awesome to see SRG320 updating this core more often, because that means we know he's good and we get to talk more about the Sega Saturn. But again, if you want a particular game in the next video, leave me a comment down below and tell me. If I haven't covered it recently and it works, I'm sure you'll see it show up in an episode. Short of that, Sega Saturn on MiSTer FPGA just keeps getting better. So many more games are working, but there's still some games out there that don't work yet, so hopefully we see those in the next update. Short of that, that's been the video. Have a good weekend. Bye bye.